So if we move one position to the left, we have the shortstop, Bichette. And I don't think it's being talked about enough of how, like Vlad obviously going to free agency, but like Bo's also going to free agency this offseason. Like, how much pressure do you think is on Bo himself to have a rebound year after having an absolute terrible 2024? And do you think like the Blue Jays, like realistically, do you think the Blue Jays will re-sign him, or do you think like it's more likely that he's going to walk as well in free agency?
Yeah, I'll say that I don't think that there's anybody that puts more pressure on Bo Bichette than Bo Bichette. Um, I think this is like, if there's anything we've learned about him during his time in his Toronto, it's that he's a super motivated dude, right? And I think that's going to kind of play into what we see from him this year. We already saw it in spring training where he had like 20 hits in whatever 60 at bats or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of looked more like himself. And obviously you don't want to read too much into spring training, but I think it was really important for him to come out and have a good spring after what happened last year. Especially, I think it's good that he hasn't maybe had the attention on him with all the Vlad stuff. So it's tough to say kind of what the expectation is, because I don't see them extending him like before the end of the year, because this is a guy who obviously is going to value himself as like an all-star level shortstop, and he's coming off a season that was decidedly not that. So
Yeah.
how do you kind of align on value that way when he's coming off such a poor season? It's really tough from both sides. And I think Bo Bichette, his long-term future might not be at shortstop, and he's going to want to be paid as a shortstop, which also kind of complicates things. There's just so many complications with the Bo Bichette deal at this point. I think he's going to have a really strong season, which is going to, it's going to get him paid this offseason. He doesn't even have to have like an MVP level season. Like, he just has to be, the Bo Bichette that we've seen before, and he's probably talking $200 million this offseason, right? So
I was thinking the Willie Adames contract of this past year, 7 years, $180
yeah,
million to San Francisco. That's the comparable that I thought of. But yeah, like if you think about the what he's going to potentially make this offseason, do you like you're saying like you don't think he has to be MVP, but like do we need like an AL hit leader, I guess, like type season where he hits 200 plus balls and like is that leader in the AL, like, or are we expecting like I don't know 20 and 150, like is that kind of in the range that we're expecting this season? What do you think?
yeah, I'd expect him to kind of be back to the Bo Bichette that we know is kind of like competing for the hits title for sure. I don't know if anybody's going to beat Bobby Witt. I think he had like 220 last
Yeah.
year or something like that. It's going to be tough to beat that guy. But no, I think he's going to be back in the conversation. He's going to be back in the group of elite shortstops in baseball. And he's going to enter free agency with a lot of teams interested in his services, because he's super young too, right? Like, people forget
Yeah.
that him and Vlad, Vlad's a year younger, but Bo is still 27, I believe, at this point. So, very young guy, going to be super, super sought after on the free agent market. And, even if the year isn't quite like, even if he, has a 270 average and has 160 hits or whatever, like, it's still going to be a guy
Hmm.
that gets paid, because it's a really good baseball player and he produces elite exit velocities. The defense, you might have to move him off short eventually, but there's just kind of this bat in there that I think you feel really confident is going to age fairly well over, the next 5-6 years, and is going to be a productive big leaguer for a long time. And I think he's going to come out in like the first few weeks here and prove that 2024 was an aberration.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, we obviously with Bo and Vlad kind of getting the majority of the focus going into this year, I think kind of obviously was viewed as an important piece, but now has kind of fallen under the radar. It seems like was the signing of Anthony Santander. 5 years, I think it was like 90 plus million. How important do you think he'll be in this lineup this year in terms of contributing to the offense? And is he kind of the guy to watch in the lineup, or is there anybody else that you're looking at as can be a spark plug and get these guys going again?
Yeah, I'm really excited about Santander. I think it was a great ad. Like, it kind of felt like he was the guy that they were going to add the entire offseason. I think, we entered the offseason talking about guys that they could go after. And obviously, you look at like Juan Soto and guys like that, but I think Santander kind of fits really well into what they needed. They needed some power, right? And I know, you talk to analytic types and they'll say that like lineup protection is a myth. And I kind of buy into that, but I also kind of don't. I think lineup prediction is a real thing, and what he's going to do is make teams pitch to Vladdy a little bit more often, because you don't want to pitch to Anthony Santander with guys on base, right? Because of his threat to leave the yard. So I think he's going to come in and be really good for Vladdy. It's basically Teoscar, but switch hitting Teoscar, right? So you kind of bring back that power threat, a guy who's going to slot in, kind of sounds like in the 3-hole and be able to hit you 30 to 40 home runs, like almost guaranteed. So feel really good about that ad. I think he's going to be a really, really fun watch this year for a team that hasn't had a lot of fun hitters to watch over the past couple seasons.
Yeah.